Time for convening having arrived. The Senate will come to order. Would ask unauthorized visitors to exit the chamber at this time. The Senate will come to order. Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from the 53rd.
Good morning, Mr. President. It's a beautiful, clear day at their state capitol where the Senate is ready to work on behalf of the 10 million people in Georgia. The journal's been read and found to be correct.
Thank you, Senator, for your good works on the journal. Is there objection dispensing with the reading of the journal? Reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators having bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 7 by Senator Thompson of the 5th, a bill to be entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 34 of Title 43 of the OCGA.
Judiciary non-civil.
Senate Bill 95 by Senator Williams of the 27th and others, a bill to be entitled An Act to Amend Chapter 40 of Title 43 of the Official Code of Georgia
Banks
Annotated.
and financial institutions.
Senate Bill 96 by Senator Tate of the 38th, a bill to be entitled An Act to Amend an Act providing a new charter for the City of Atlanta.
State and local governmental operations.
Senate Bill 97 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others, a bill to be entitled An Act to Amend. Senate Bill 98 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, a bill to be entitled An Act to Amend Article 1 of Chapter 10
Judiciary non-civil.
Senate Bill 99 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, a bill to be entitled An Act to Amend Article 3.
Judiciary non-civil.
Senate Bill 100 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others, a bill to be entitled
Public safety.
Senate Bill 101 by Senator Watson of the 1st and others, a bill to be entitled
Natural resources.
Senate Bill 102 by Senator McCoon of the 29th and others, a bill to be entitled An Act to Amend Title 21 of Official Code of Georgia Annotated.
Ethics.
Mr. President, this completes the order.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions.
House Bill 181 by Representative Bentley of the 139th.
Slow go.
House Bill 187 by Representative Donahue of the 30th and others.
Slow go.
House Bill 188 by Representative Shaw of the 176th and a bill to be entitled An Act.
Slow go.
House Bill 189 by Representative Shaw of the 176th and
Slow go.
House Bill 203 by Representative Williams of the 119th and others, a bill to be entitled An Act to Amend an Act.
Slow go.
Mr. President, this completes the order.
Secretary will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Environment has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report back the same to the Senate with the following recommendation: that Senate Bill 62 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Tolleson of the 20th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Economic Development and Tourism has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that Senate Bill 4 do pass by substitute, that Senate Bill 59 do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Ginn of the 47th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report back the same to the Senate with the following recommendation: that SB 65 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator McCoon of the 29th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report back the same to the Senate with the following recommendation: that Senate Bill 18 do pass by substitute, that Senate Bill 58 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Miller of the 40th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Governmental Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report back the same to the Senate with the following recommendation: that Senate Bill 75 do pass, that Senate Bill 84 do pass, that House Bill 125 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Albers of the 56th District Chairman. Mr. President, this completes the order.
The Secretary will read the bills for the second time.
Senate Bill 8 by Senator Unterman of the 45th and others. Crimes and offenses. Children who have been sexually exploited make provisions, create safe harbor for sexually exploited children fund commission. Senate Bill 79 by Senator Unterman of the 45th. Victim compensation. Expand the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council's powers and duties relative to claims. Senate Resolution 7 by Senator Unterman of the 45th. Safe harbor for sexually exploited children fund. Provide that General Assembly by law may impose additional penalties or fees for the offenses. Mr. President, this completes the order.
All right, it's now time for the morning roll call. Time for the morning roll call. Are the motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the very distinguished senator from the 34th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 38th and the 26th.
38th and 26th. 38th and 26th. Without objection, the two senators will be excused. Are there any other motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th. 35th.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 43rd.
43rd,
he's
without
out on
objection, the
business.
senator from the 43rd will be excused. Chair
Thank you.
recognizes the distinguished minority leader.
Mr. President, I move for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from 38th for business outside the Capitol.
38th, without objection, the senator will be excused. Are there any other motions to excuse? The secretary will call the roll of senators. Please signify your presence by voting the yea switch. Secretary will unlock the machine. All right. Well, maybe you'll get a good introduction by PK. He's new, you know. We'll see if we can figure it out. How are you, Senator? Good. Good to see you. Good. It is now time for our morning devotion. Time for our morning devotion. Would ask that senators please take your seats, cease conversation at this time, and doorkeepers, if you would, secure the chamber as we are preparing for our morning devotion. It is now my honor to recognize the distinguished senator from the 9th to lead us in our pledge and introduce our special chaplain of the day.
Good morning. Will you join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. Good morning, Senators. This morning it is my great honor to be able to introduce to you my pastor this morning for the morning devotion. Foley Beach, the Most Reverend Dr. Foley Beach, is the Archbishop of the Anglican Church in North America. He oversees over 1,000 congregations in the U.S. and Canada with over 100,000 people in church on Sunday. He also serves as the diocesan bishop of the Anglican Diocese of the South, headquartered in the suburb of Atlanta, Georgia, which is in Loganville. He's a graduate of Georgia State University, the University of the South, and Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. Archbishop Beach has ministered with Young Life, the Episcopal Church, the Anglican Church in North America, and was the founding rector of Holy Cross Anglican Church in Loganville, Georgia. Not only that, he also has his own ministry, A Word from the Lord, where he has radio messages that can be heard all over the world, and you can also sign up for a 1-minute weekly, I think, email to get a 1-minute message from him. And he's a fantastic guy. But the bio is very impressive, but what's more impressive is the person that he is. It's a great honor to have him as my pastor. And even though we've had to share him since he's become the Archbishop with quite a number of people, still having him as a friend who I can call on, who I can send an email to, and who will respond and give me good counsel is always great. What's the most impressive about him, though, is his dedication to his family, his dedication to his church and God. Story about Foley, when he received a call to leave all that was comfortable at a time when he left the Episcopal Church and set out to found Holy Cross and join the Anglican Church. The comfort, the easy thing to do probably was to stay in his comfort zone and continue to move forward and stay where he was. But he followed God's call. He stepped out on faith, and he walked down that appointed path. And that appointed path led him to where he is today, gave him the leadership skills he needs, and he is leading our church and all of North America. And I'm proud to call him my pastor. And I'll tell a really quick story about Foley that the first time I met him, when we were visiting Holy Cross, coincidentally, it actually met when I was first elected, and my first role in public service was the time that we decided it was time to move churches. And the very first month that I served on the Lawrenceville City Council was the first time that was the exact time that we began to attend at Holy Cross. The first time we went there, we talked to him for a while. I said, we're in an interesting spot. I grew up in the Baptist church, and my wife grew up in the Episcopal church. And he pulled me aside and he said, well, you know what? You'll be at home here. He said, we worship like the Episcopals, but people tell me I preach like a Baptist. Ladies and gentlemen, His Grace, Archbishop Foley Beach.
Thank you, Senator Martin. Warm introduction. Mr. Lieutenant Governor of Senators and fellow citizens of the state of Georgia, grace to you and peace from God our Father and our Lord Jesus Christ. I'd like to say I count it an incredible privilege to be able to stand before you this morning to share. As one who used to be a street kid on the streets of Atlanta and play outside of literally these very doors, I'm truly a work of God in the sense of a miracle and proof of the transforming power of Jesus Christ in one's life. That I could be standing before you today is amazing. My text this morning is from the first chapter of Joshua in the Bible. The setting is at the end of Moses' life and leadership. He has handed over his leadership responsibilities to Joshua, and the Lord gives Joshua some advice which I believe is applicable, especially for you who are leaders in our state. Joshua was to lead God's people into the promised land, and the Lord wants to make sure that he will lead with understanding, that the Lord wants to bless him and wants to guide him. Not only does Joshua have some battles ahead of him, but he also has to establish a new nation, to set up a society and a community for millions of people with the blessing of God. But there is a condition. There's a requirement. Even today, God wants to bless humanity. He wants humanity to be successful, but there is a condition. There's a requirement. So hear the words of Joshua chapter 1. Be strong and courageous, for you shall cause this people to inherit the land that I swore to their fathers to give to them. Only be strong and very courageous, being careful to do all according to the law of Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may have good success wherever you go. This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you will be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened. Do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. If Joshua is to be successful, if he wants the nation to be successful, he must obey the laws of God. The law of God not only invites the blessings of God, but it invites the protection of God. The founders of this state and this nation knew that this was true. And this is why our system of government was constructed with the moral and ethical basis of the Ten Commandments, the law of God. That the laws of our state and of this country would line up with the law of God. who cannot argue objectively that God has indeed blessed and protected this land and this state? Even when we got it wrong, he led us to get it right. In recent years, however, we have begun to remove the law of God from our public and private lives. And we've seen our civilized society begin to come apart at the seams. Without the law of God within the moral conscience of our leaders and of our citizens, individuals are not able to self-govern themselves. And when citizens lack self-governance, it leads to a society of chaos and anarchy. This law is summarized in the Ten Commandments, and how Jesus summarized it when he said, "The greatest commandment is this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this: to love your neighbor as yourself." This law of God is to be our guide. It invites not only the blessing of God, but his protection as well. And so, as our elected representatives, I would ask you to consider, are the laws which you pass driving us further from the law of God, or are they bringing us closer to the law of God? The eternal standards of right and wrong do not change, even though the culture and public opinion polls do. Again from Joshua, "This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success." For the sake of our citizens, for our children, and for our grandchildren, don't forget the law of God in your decisions. I invite you now to stand for prayer. Our Father, as we come this day, I ask your blessing upon these men and women as they seek to make decisions on behalf of the citizens of this state. Give them wisdom, give them guidance, give them understanding. Help them to walk in the way of your laws in light of all that's going on around us. And this is our prayer in Jesus' name. And now may the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of his Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always. Amen.
know you are. Hey, the bigger question is Mel ready? She better have been working the floor, getting us a unanimous vote. We have a special group we'd like to recognize. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 140 by Senator Kirk of the 13th and others. A resolution recognizing the annual Cordele Crisp County Fish Fry and commending Mr. Clark Henderson, Mr. Bob Denham, Mr. Briley Edwards, Mrs. Kimberly Reed, Mr. Zach Wade, and the Cordele Crisp County Fish Fry cooking team, and for other purposes. Whereas Chairman Briley Edwards of the Cordele Crisp County Chamber of Commerce, City of Cordele Commission Chairman Zach Wade, Crisp County Board of Commissioners Chairman Clark Henderson, Crisp County Power Commission Chairman Bob Denham, and Mrs. Kimberly Reed are recognized spokespersons of the Cordele Crisp County Fish Fry. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize the Cordele Crisp County Fish Fry and commend Mr. Clark Henderson, Zach Wade, Mr. Bob Denham, Ms. Kimberly Reed, and Mr. Briley Edwards and the Cordele Crisp County Fish Fry cooking team. Mr. President, this completes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Without objection, the resolution is adopted. It is a great honor to always have Cordele Crisp County present with us here in the chamber and to speak to the resolution and recognize our very special guest. I call upon the distinguished senator from the 13th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to invite everybody out this afternoon over at the depot. You have been to this fish fry before. This is the 27th year of the Cordele Crisp County Fish Fry. You already know what a hit it is, so please make plans to come by the depot and see everybody. And Brother Bub's going to say just a couple of quick words to you now.
Yeah, thank you very much. Listen, I appreciate the opportunity to stand before this group today. I realize when I come in here the awesome responsibility you have to the people in Georgia, and I stand in awe at the decisions you make, and we just thank you so much for what you do for Crisp County and for the people of the state of Georgia. And in turn, we're going to feed you 300 pounds of South Georgia catfish tonight at 5 o'clock. We're going to throw in 75 pounds of bacon and all the trimmings. You're welcome to come at 5 o'clock and bring your staff with you and have a great time. Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor knows. Let's get a picture down here. Yeah. Now I'll tell you what. I know it. I love y'all come over there. We're gonna get a picture. Are they ready? No. We'll do documentary. Like to present the doctor of the day. To do so, I call upon the distinguished senator from the 9th.
It's my honor today to introduce Dr. Snehal C. Dalal. He provides orthopedic care to patients in the Johns Creek and Gwinnett areas, and is a board-certified orthopedic surgeon. His practice includes general orthopedics, sports medicine with specialty training and surgery of the hand and upper extremity. This includes the elbow, shoulder, and shoulder arthroscopy and reconstruction. Dr. Dalal graduated from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, with a bachelor's science degree in biomedical engineering. He received his Doctor of Medicine degree from the Ohio State University College of Medicine and Public Health, and completed his residency in orthopedic surgery at the Medical College of Wisconsin. Dr. Dalal completed his fellowship training in shoulder, elbow, and hand surgery in Milwaukee, as well as conducted research on rotator cuff injuries and elbow trauma as part of the Milwaukee Combined Upper Extremity Fellowship. He has served as a team physician for Duluth and Central Gwinnett High Schools, co-medical director of the BB&T Atlanta Open, and sideline physician for the Chick-fil-A Bowl and Chick-fil-A kickoff game. Dr. DeLaw also serves as the hand surgeon for the Gwinnett professional hockey team, the Gwinnett Gladiators. Dr. DeLaw resides in the Lawrenceville area with his wife, Falguni, and their 3 absolutely beautiful daughters. He has a beautiful family, and in his free time, he enjoys running, tennis, skiing, traveling, and photography. And he wanted to let us know also they are avid football fans, and I assume that means Ohio State, but we won't let him rub that in today. Dr. Snehal Dalal.
Thank you. PK forgot to add the national champions, the Ohio State University. So, I just wanted to say that it is an absolute honor and pleasure to be here and to be Doctor of the Day. I believe this is my 4th time here at the Capitol as Doctor of the Day, and I hope to do this for many more years to come. As a fellow public servant, I want to thank you graciously for your selfless public service. And remember, 'tis the season, so we have a fresh stock of throat lozenges, so come on down. All right.
All right, good deal. Wonderful. Let's pose for a picture down here. We have another special group we'd like to recognize, and Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 191 by Senator Sims of the 12th, a resolution commending Fort Valley State University, recognizing February 11th, 2015 as Fort Valley State University Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas Fort Valley State University started as Fort Valley High and Industrial School in 1895. During that year, 18 visionaries petitioned Houston County Superior Court for a school charter, which was granted on November 5th, 1895. And whereas under the visionary leadership of the institution's 9th president, Dr. Ivalaw Lloyd Griffith, Fort Valley State University continues to grow as an educational beacon in Middle Georgia. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend Fort Valley State University for its scholastic achievement, commitment to excellence, and investment in students, and recognize February 11th, 2015 as Fort Valley State University Day at the Capitol. Mr. President, this completes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. It's now my privilege to recognize a wonderful senator, very distinguished senator from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. It is very, very rare that I take to the podium. So when I do come, it is of extreme importance. This morning, I am privileged to honor my alma mater, Fort Valley State University. On the podium this morning, I have Dr. Angela Harris. Please raise your hands, Dr. Harris, who is Vice President for Student Success and Enrollment Management. Mr. Wallace Keith, Dean of Students. Dr. Govind Cannon, Dean of the College of Agriculture, Family Sciences and Technology. Ariel Hill, President of the Student Government Association, and Caitlin Main, a student of veterinary science at Fort Valley State University. At this time, we will ask Ariel Hill, who is President of the Student Government Association, to greet you. Thank you.
Greetings. I am Ariel Hill, a senior psychology major hailing from the Blue City of Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you for your support of Fort Valley State University. FVSU continues to make a difference not only in my life, but in the lives of thousands of Georgians. Join us in the celebration of the 125th anniversary of the Second Morrill Act, which gave rise to the 1890 land-grant universities to foster the scientific study of agriculture and military science. Because of lawmakers like you, both land-grant universities in Georgia have significantly transformed the role of higher education in the state and increased the degree of access for students to pursue a college education. One of our points of pride in the scientific study of agriculture is our world-famous Fort Valley State University goat milk products. Today, our gift to you is our incredible goat milk soap. But today, we invite you to visit our 1,365-acre campus to see teaching and research accomplishments and enjoy some of our other campus-produced products and services. Thank you again for welcoming us in our FVSU Day at the Capitol.
There are also alum in the gallery, so would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
I'd like to recognize another special guest. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 107 by Senator Jones of the 25th, Hill of the 6th, and Cowsert of the 46th. A resolution recognizing February 11th, 2015 as Jackson Butts County Day at the state capitol and for other purposes. Whereas the center of the state's population, Butts County, located between Atlanta and Macon, was carved from parts of Henry and Monroe counties in 1825 by the state legislature and presented to Governor George Troup as a gift. And whereas the county also boasts a nonprofit environmental education center, Dawsett Trails, which provides environmental programs for groups with 1,400 acres of scenic woods, fields, creeks, and lakes for visitors to enjoy. And whereas Jackson Butts County has also provided economic prosperity for the state of Georgia, adding 500 jobs to the state's economy and expanding existing industries. Now therefore be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize February 11th, 2015 as Jackson Butts County Day at the state capitol and express their most sincere best wishes for continued growth and success. Mr. President, this completes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. We always appreciate so much Jackson and Butts County, and no one represents them better than the senator from the 25th, and we're honored to recognize him now as he recognizes this very special delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to recognize my home county, Jackson Butts County. This is our second annual Day at the Capitol. We would have a crowd in the gallery, but they have been held up a little bit due to some things unbeknownst to them downstairs. I told them if everything ran as smooth as the Senate, we wouldn't have this problem. But Jackson and Butts County is a little community that's located about 40 minutes south of the airport, and we're a growing community that is blessed with 2 public lakes in Lake Jackson and High Falls Lake, and 2 state parks in Indian Springs State Park, which is the oldest state park in the country, as well as High Falls State Park. So we're right off the interstate. We're a community that's geared for growth. I have on the roster here with me our leaders. I have our mayor from the city of Jackson, Kay Pippin. I have our sheriff, Gary Long, he's doing an outstanding job for our community. Also our president chamber, Mr. Charles Watts, and then our partners for smart growth, Joe Westbury, as well as our county administrator, Mr. Michael Brewer. So I'm going to yield the podium for our mayor to speak to you, but just let all you know that you're very welcome to come. We're going to have lunch today over at the Empire Room at the Sloppy Floyd building. All of you are invited and always welcome in our community. Kay Pippin, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here to officially bring you greetings from the city of Jackson and the city of Jenkinsburg and the little city of Flovilla and all of Butts County. If they were not downstairs waiting to have their photo made, there would be about 100 of our colleagues in the gallery. I don't believe anyone's here, correct? They're still downstairs waiting for the photo, but you'll see them today with their badges on that resemble the postcards that you found in those neat little gift bags that we left for you this morning. And please take special notice that there is a postcard, and on the back of that postcard is a gift for each of you. So please get it out, read it, and take advantage of that. And it will lead you to one of our establishments that's better than 80 years old, and you'll get to enjoy a barbecue sauce that's also over 80 years old. And like Coca-Cola's Serum Secret, this is a secret sauce as well. I can never stand before you in any capacity without adding that we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for caring enough about our state to offer yourselves for public service and for serving. Thank you, and come visit us in Butts County.
much. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 10th to recognize some special guests.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of this great body. It is my honor to introduce one of the most influential religious leaders in this state, Bishop Kenneth Carter. Bishop Carter is the presiding bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. He is joined by three of his elders, Elder Jerry Warfolk, Elder Albert Lee, and Elder Jane Thomas. And when I say influential, I really mean influential. In the back end of the day, we have a few of the members of the CME Church. He has over 100,000 members, has over 300 churches in Georgia and over 41 in Haiti. And when I had a chance to meet Bishop Carter some years ago, I asked someone to describe to me this man. They said he is, in fact, the epitome of a servant leader. Not only does he fit that description, but anywhere he goes, either in this great state of ours or in another country, he always rolls up his sleeves and works right alongside everyone else. I can't thank Bishop Carter and a few of his members for being here today and having this opportunity to introduce him. And at this time, I would like a few of his members from the CME Church to please stand. Will y'all join me in recognizing them? Again, Bishop Carter, thank you and welcome to the State Senate. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Lieutenant
Thank
Governor.
you so much. It's an honor to have you with us today. Are there any unanimous consents? Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes distinguished senator from the 55th on a point of personal privilege. Please give her your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I'm standing in for the senator from the 43rd, and I want to recognize the Rockdale County School Nutrition Association, and they call themselves RCSNA. They were at the Capitol today to thank their representatives for their continued support of the important work we do on behalf of the school children in Rockdale County. There are approximately 200 school nutrition employees in the Rockdale County public school system. They have 12 in their group today. Can you show me where you're sitting in the gallery? Will you please stand? I'm not sure they're still here, but they include food assistants, cafeteria managers, and administrative staff. They have with them, if they're in the hall, Peggy Lawrence, president of the association, Bobby Wood. And each school day, they serve 20,000 breakfasts, lunches, and after-school snacks to Rockdale County students and staff. They serve healthy, nutritious meals that meet rigorous federal guidelines while maintaining a balanced budget. And they are currently preparing for their second year of taking a leadership role for a community-based summer feeding program for Rockdale. I'd like to say welcome to the Rockdale County School Nutrition Association. Thank you for coming to see us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th on a point of personal privilege. Please give the distinguished Judiciary Chairman your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise this morning to provide some important facts to my colleagues on the crime of illegal immigration. According to official estimates, Georgia has more illegal immigrants than Arizona. and the Federation for American Immigration Reform has made the estimate that the crime of illegal immigration costs Georgia taxpayers at least $2.4 billion annually, almost $1 billion more than has been estimated is needed to address our transportation funding crisis. As you know, President Obama has unilaterally proclaimed through executive fiat that about half of the estimated number of illegal immigrants who are now in our republic shall be awarded work permits and real Social Security numbers. In doing so, the President has single-handedly extended access through this executive unfunded mandate to most of our taxpayer-funded state public benefits and the privileges that Americans, including legal immigrants, enjoy in Georgia. At a time when news outlets around the state and nation reflect the growing income disparity of the wealthiest and poorest Americans, and with the widely recognized wage stagnation for low-wage and middle-class Americans, I would observe that the President's legally questionable actions are not in sync with the agenda of seeking higher wages and increasing job prospects of American voters that we were sent here to represent. In direct defiance of the elected Congress in Washington, President Obama has also issued a guarantee of so-called deferred action on the deportation proceedings for which all illegal immigrants qualify. I want to make it clear that according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the White House, the illegal immigrants who are recipients of this presidential directive are still illegal immigrants. Despite endless attempts to blur this fact, the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service makes it clear that deferred action on deportation does not confer legal status in the United States. Despite the long present and common sense intention of our driver's license laws and the overwhelming majority of public opinion, these deferred action illegal immigrants, who are still illegal immigrants, are now eligible for a Georgia driver's license. With Senate Bill 6, it is my intention to end this alarming situation. In that process, and to counter false information to the contrary, I want to ensure that each member understands that the Obama administration is making it clear in federal court that there is no requirement in law that individual states reward deferred action illegal immigrants with a driver's license. As many Georgians have pointed out to me, there is a visible disconnect in the fact that while this state is a plaintiff, along with 25 other states in a lawsuit to challenge the president's action, there seems to be a lack of enthusiasm to use our inherent power to mitigate the impact of as much of the Obama executive amnesty as possible, including rewarding any illegal immigrants with the keys to the kingdom and de facto state amnesty, a Georgia driver's license. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 50th on a point of personal privilege.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I'd like to take this occasion to recognize the members of the Georgia Green Industry Association. A number of them are present at the Capitol today. The Georgia Green Industry Association includes individuals in landscape, irrigation contractors, wholesale, nursery growers, greenhouse operators, retail garden centers, flower growers, and allied sales companies. The Green Association represents the horticulture industry in the state of Georgia, and this is a very important industry to our state, and I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Senate to commend them for the work that they do and welcome them to the Capitol today. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the Senator from the 39th on a point of personal privilege. Please give Senator your attention.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I rise on a personal privilege, on a point of personal privilege with a dual purpose. First of all, on the issue of immigration, I would remind you and remind the senator from the 29th that what the president has done in his executive orders on immigration is not unusual. Indeed, each president since Dwight D. Eisenhower until this very hour have done what? Issued executive orders on immigration. It's been a bipartisan approach by many presidents to issue executive orders on immigration which deal with the reality of American life. Now, there's some people that argue that we need self-deportation and, other fantastical solutions to the immigration problem, but we need to do something. The Republican Party has refused to do anything in Congress, and the president has acted, and he should continue to act until, once again, immigration reform becomes a bipartisan issue with bipartisan solutions for a comprehensive solution. So what President Obama has done is in keeping with chief executives going back more than 60 years. And, if you want to do something, if you don't like his executive order, do something. If you don't like his executive order, then do something other than attack immigrants. It's interesting, on this very day, there are people out in the halls, refugees from foreign lands who have come to this country to achieve the American dream. As a matter of fact, at 1 o'clock this afternoon, the greatest ceremony in a democracy, other than voting, is going to be held in this Capitol, a naturalization ceremony, where people who have come and have left their countries of origin because they're being persecuted are going to raise that right hand, and they're going to be Americans after they let that right hand fall. So let's understand, immigration reform ought to be what? Bipartisan, it ought to be comprehensive, and it ought to be done sooner than later. Otherwise, let the president do what he can for a solution. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 25th on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I'd like to take this opportunity now to reiterate that today is Jackson-Butts County Day, and even though my folks from Butts County were not in the gallery earlier, I wanted for them to stand and be recognized if they could, and let's give them a big round of applause. We are a proud little community and have a large delegation here today to prove that. So once again, I'd like to invite each and every one of you, if you can, come to the Empire Room for lunch. We'll have plenty for you, and it'll be on me, my treat. So y'all know I don't offer that too many times. So thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Y'all make sure you run the tab up real high on him while you have the chance. It's also a great honor to welcome to the Senate the very first lady of the 25th District. Ms. Jan's with us as well. Glad to have her. Let's give her a round of applause. Chair recognizes Senator from the 1st on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the Senate, in honor of Black History Month, I rise on a point of personal privilege to draw the attention of the Senate to a remarkable individual from the state of Georgia whose accomplishments meet our recognition and respect. Dr. Lewis Sullivan, born right here in Atlanta, raised in Blakely, Georgia, Dr. Sullivan had decided by the age of 5 years old that he was to pursue a career in medicine. Over 75 years, he has done that and much, much more. After an illustrious academic career studying at Morehouse College, Boston University, Harvard Medical School, he would go on to teach at both Boston University and Harvard and to help found the Morehouse School of Medicine in 1975. For 2 decades, he served as the Dean of Morehouse School of Medicine, stopping only when approached by President George Herbert Walker Bush and asked to serve as Secretary of Health and Human Services, a position he held from 1989 to 1993. A lifetime Republican and tireless advocate of diversity, Dr. Sullivan has for years devoted himself to the diversification of the medical profession, selecting the first female director of the National Institutes of Health, the first female Surgeon General, the first African American Commissioner of the Social Security Administration. Beyond his work as Dean, Dr. Sullivan has led the Sullivan Committee on Diversity in the Healthcare Workforce and the Sullivan Alliance to transform the healthcare professions and was a founder of the Medical Association of South African Blacks. He has served as a board member to 10 major corporations, including GM, 3M, as well as the Grady Hospital Board of Trustees. And he is the author of 2 books, The Morehouse Mystique, Becoming a Doctor at the nation's newest African medical school, and Breaking Ground, My Life in Medicine. I thank you for joining me in recognizing and honoring Dr. Sullivan here today and in looking to his career of scientific research and public service to inspire us as we strive to do our best for the people of Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 54th on a point of personal privilege. Please give the Senator your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have 3 points, and I think I'll get them all inside my time limit. My first is to recognize, as some others have done this morning, folks from home. The Leadership Dalton Whitfield class for this year is at the Capitol today. I'm looking to see if anybody's going to wave at me. I don't know if anybody made it in yet. They were across the street hearing from speakers. But if you see any folks from the Leadership Dalton Whitfield class, let them know they have the second best senator in the House. If you don't mind, I'd appreciate that very much. On another point, my friend from the 35th asked us to remember moments of significance. And I would note that today, February 11th in 1976, Clifford Alexander Jr., a black American man, was appointed as Secretary of the Army, the first black man to serve in that role. President Carter appointed him to that position, and he served for the rest of the Carter administration. Again, a Georgia connection to significant landmarks in our effort in race relations in America. And the last piece, I would echo part of the comments of my friend from the 39th. The minority whip pointed out that we will have a naturalization ceremony today in the state capitol. Unfortunately, at 1 o'clock I will be in a committee meeting and not able to attend, but I do want to encourage everyone in the capitol today, if you are not otherwise occupied at 1 o'clock, as an American citizen, watching Americans be made in front of you is a really special occasion. And if you've never witnessed, or if your interns or aides or staff have never seen a naturalization ceremony, I do hope that you will encourage others to go and watch that occasion. It should be something that we celebrate as our nation grows and our brotherhood and fellowship grows. And so, Mr. President, I yield the well. Thank you very much.
Are there any unanimous consents? Moving on, you have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you on a consent calendar. Is there any objection? Chair hears none, and the consent calendar privileged resolutions are therefore adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? Chair recognizes Senator from the 52nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that Senate Bill 64 be withdrawn. from the Committee on Judiciary and committed to the Committee on Special Judiciary, and both chairmen are agreeable to the change.
The senator is moving that Senate Bill 64 be moved from judiciary into special judiciary. Both chairmen are in agreement. Is there objection? Without objection, the bill will reside in special judiciary. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed on any of the bills of the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed in the Secretary's office.
Is there objection agreeing to report of committee on the state and local governmental operations which failed to pass the bill on the local consent calendar? Chair is none. The report of committee is agreed to. Questions on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. You're voting on the local consent calendar. On the passage of the local consent calendar, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0. Local consent calendar has therefore been adopted. Moving on to the general calendar, the Secretary will read House Bill 75.
House Bill 75 by Representative Ralston of the 7th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to be entitled Act to Amend an Act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2014 and ending June 30th, 2015, known as the General Appropriations Act. Mr. President, the Senate Appropriations Committee offers the following substitute to HB 75, a bill to be entitled an Act to Amend an Act making and providing appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2014 and ending June 30th, 2015, known as the General Appropriations Act, so as to make, provide, change certain appropriations for the operation of state government and its departments, boards, bureaus, commissions, institutions, and other agencies. Mr. President, this complete, and for other purposes. Mr. President, this completes the order.
Chair recognizes the distinguished appropriations chairman, the senator from the 4th, to present the supplemental appropriations budget. Please give the distinguished senator your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. I bring to you this morning the Senate substitute to House Bill 75, the FY15 amended budget. And before I get into some remarks, let me just take a moment and thank our budget staff, who many of whom are in the room today. Melody Debussy, our budget director, for her hard work. Angela Tui in my office, who sets up the subcommittee meetings and works so hard with our subcommittee chair. Lieutenant Governor and his staff for their cooperation and input all along the way. President Pro Tem and his staff for their participation, and the Majority Leader and his work as well, and helping us to, particularly on the schedule, to come up with a schedule that ensures that you have the time to produce a budget that meets the Senate's needs as well. Last of all, our subcommittee chairs, thank you for your work in this budget. This was somewhat of a run-through for the amended, but in the FY16 budget, it will require a lot more time and a lot more attention. And many of our subcommittee chairs are standing committee chairs and have numerous other duties. And I appreciate the fact that they make time to carry on the work of the Appropriations Committee, and I appreciate your work very much. Ladies and gentlemen, the FY15 amended budget meets what we have established as our principles of budgeting. If you can go on the Senate website, and as Casey Stingwell used to say, you can look it up. We actually have principles of budgeting, and we take very seriously. Lieutenant Governor led the way over the years, particularly on the amended budget, in stating what we think we should be attempting to do in the amended budget. That first of all, the amended budget should true up formulas and scholarships and other programs to meet the actual use that we know about from by this time of the year. That it should contain only funding of critical needs or unforeseen contingencies. We don't launch new programs normally in the amended budget. Incidentally, the Senate version is actually on the Senate website under the SBEO icon, and I invite you to look. If you're somewhere and you need to look something up, you can look it up on the Senate website. Additionally, all the budgets for the past few years, going all the way back to 2008, are located on that website as well. So you can't seem to go to sleep at night and you really want something to put you to sleep, you call up an old budget and look at it, and that should bring back memories. On your desk today is a listing, an up-to-date today's listing of everything in the Senate version, including agreements and disagreements. It has all the amounts of money and so forth. For your information you put out to your district, or for answering emails or requests from constituents, this should give you all the information you need without having to take the budget out and try to find it in the budget. And of course, in many cases, it gives you a number as well. But that's a good thing for you to use, and I invite you to use that as well. Governor Deal has, I think, included funds in this amended budget for some very critically important programs. They're important to the economic development of the state, and important to the safety and security of children in Georgia, and important to the continued judicial reform, the pathway that we've begun there. And they provide funds, the vital funds that we need to fund the growth in a K-12 educational system and the teacher pay scale for this year. And those are the major elements of the FY amended budget. It totals some $21.1 billion, includes lottery proceeds that are estimated at $947.9 million, and motor fuel proceeds estimated at $992.2 million. It recognizes less than 1%, 0.4 tenths of 1% in additional Department of Revenue collections that are in addition to the mid-year education adjustment, which comes out of the reserve. The amended budget is built on 3.6% tax revenue growth over actual FY14 collections. So, you know, if you're keeping up with revenue growth, that is somewhat under our revenue growth, which means that, you know, hopefully at the end of June we'll have a sizable amount of funds to lapse into the RSR and continue to build up our RSR. By the way, today, after the deduction of the mid-year education adjustment, the ready reserve for the state totals $862 million. So we've come a long way from the dark days of the recession. In education, this budget, as I mentioned, includes $126 million for the mid-year education adjustment that is based on the enrollment count back in October, and it includes funding the teacher pay scale as well. Other items include $35 million for broadband grants to K-12 systems and the attempt, Governor Deal has led an attempt to get every school system in the state to the point where they can take advantage of technology for learning and learning into the future as well. Combined with funds in earlier budget, this is a total of $60 million that the state has put forward in grants to K-12 systems to allow them to fund whatever their need in technology is. In economic development, Governor Deal has recommended, and the House and the Senate have agreed on an additional $20 million for the Regional Economic Business Assistance Grants, or the acronym is REBA that we talk about very often. These complete packages that bring investment and jobs to Georgia. I don't know about you, but we are having some pretty good luck in bringing new industry to Georgia, and I don't want the governor out there campaigning and bringing an industry to Georgia and not be able to write a check for whatever the amount is we need to bring them here, or bring whatever infrastructure that we need to put forward. Additionally, there's $20 million for the One Georgia program, which assists rural Georgia in economic development programs, and usually infrastructure to bring industry in. The first piece of funding that will help support what is being called the Georgia Film Academy, this $515,000, begins the coordination of training and educational opportunities for Georgians who are interested in learning the movie and film business trade. We think this is going to be a great thing to continue to build what has been a wildly successful attempt by the state to become a real player in the film and movie industry. In healthcare, there's $81 million included to fund growth and other elements of Medicaid need that's associated with the Medicaid program, which are, of course, are all projections, but that's the projection of the Department of Community Health. There's also $12 million included for Medicaid treatment of hepatitis C, a very expensive treatment today, but very effective. It's just a very expensive treatment. You'll see funds both in Medicaid and in the state prison system as well. Bariatric surgery is an initiative the legislature began a couple of years ago and has attempted to get the state health benefit plan to cover bariatric surgery. I'm proud to say that in this budget is $2.7 million that will fund a pilot program by the state health benefit plan concerning bariatric surgery. Also, an issue that we're all interested in, and that's the clinical trials that Georgia Regents University and Children's Health Care will be conducting on the use of cannabis oil to help in treating children's seizure disorders. There's $4.8 million in the state amended budget to fund those clinical trials as well. Matter of concern for many of you is child protective workers. I will tell you that there's funding in there for 103 child protective service workers who are already hired. And of course, in the FY16 budget, you'll see funding for an additional 103 or so. We've increased the funding for court-appointed special advocates for children, CASA. As you know, many of you have CASA organizations in your area. They have had a basic cost in their work, and that is the fingerprint background check that they must have on every volunteer. These are all volunteers and not paid, but the cost is that they pay the GBI for that test has been going up, and so we've included. The House had $12,500. We went to $25,000, which is about half of what they said that they needed. So we're at least making an effort to help them in that regard. Item number 90.8 is an issue that many of you are interested in and concerned about. It has to do with non-certified school employees and their access to health insurance. The governor had language in his budget that called on the Department of Community Health to conduct a study on the state health benefit plan on some of the issues there. The House added language that basically says, and as it's 90.8 if you want to look it up and read it, that basically says that these non-certified employees who work under 30 hours a week are an important part of the educational system of the state, and that any planning that the department does concerning state health benefit plan should include a plan to provide coverage to those employees. So we're making a statement in the amended budget. We'll continue to address that issue in 16, but just want you to know there is language in here that addresses that issue in the 15 amended. Governor Deal's initiative to ensure inmates can get a job and stay out of prison once once their sentence is served, has its beginnings in this budget, and you'll see other entries in the 16 budget. But there's funding in here for vocational training, for GED fast tracking, for establishing charter schools inside 2 prisons so they can issue high school diplomas to those prisoners who will be eligible. There's also additional funding for substance abuse treatment. All of this together is about $3.2 million. An issue that sometimes is hard for members to get their arms around is something called OPEB, and it stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. What it basically is health insurance for retirees. Now, as you know, for active employees in the state government, the state or whoever their employer is in the state, it could be the local school system, provides 70% or whatever the percentage is now for the employer portion of health insurance. The member pays the other 30% or so as a premium. Well, the same thing is true of retirees. They pay a premium for whichever policy they have, but they don't have an employer. So the state is basically serving as their employer, and that's what the other post-employment benefits issue is how do we fund that employer portion of health insurance for retirees. Today, we write a check for it every year. That check totals some $540 million that is our portion of the cost. We're self-insured, so one year's payouts becomes the next year's premiums. It's our portion of the cost of that health care. National accounting standards, and to some degree we're all affected by national accounting standards because the bond underwriters look at whether you're following national accounting standards, just like they look at how you're funding retirement systems and other issues as well. The national NASB, I believe it's called, is the National Association of Standards in Accounting, has come up with a conclusion that is a liability for the state, for all states, for anybody who provides retiree benefits, and that you should book that liability or put funds aside to pay that eventual liability. So we attempted before the recession to begin to fund that liability. For Georgia, that liability is about $14 billion if we funded it today. Similarly, the way we fund retirement liabilities as well, but we're attempting to go down that road. It will cost, of course, a lot of money to put that money aside, but eventually what we'll do is take the payment for those benefits for retirees out of this fund, out of the interest that this fund earns, rather than getting out of current cash. So there's a business side to this that makes a lot of sense. The reason it's important today and in these 2 budgets is that the other AAA rated states generally are all addressing this issue and putting funds aside at varying levels. Georgia today has 0 put aside for this benefit. So the governor, and I think who's very rightfully so, has begun down this road in this amended budget by setting aside $187 million, which will be combined with another $98 million in FY16, so that between these 2 budgets, we will have set aside $285 million for these OPEB benefits for this fund. This will, we think, provide the signal that we need to send to the bond underwriters that we are addressing this issue and that we want to continue to be a state that's well run and handles its affairs in a business-like way. Local governments and school boards will be glad to know that we're continuing to fund the loss of ad valorem taxes associated with the forest land protection grants, and there's another $15 million to fund the replacement of that liability that keeps so many acres around the state out of the hands of development and keeps them producing trees and helping our environment. Item 347.2 adds $5.6 million in motor fuel funds for the Transportation Infrastructure Bank for debt service due in FY16. The state gets a good deal out of this Transportation Infrastructure Bank. It usually has a 4-to-1 match in projects and would bring our total in that bank to $15 million. I think that's a good investment for the state. One reminder, and I almost always get a question about the bonds in the back of this budget. This is a repeal and replace amended budget in that it repeats everything in the FY15 budget and then replaces it with new language in those cases or new amounts where they're applicable. So in the back of this budget, you'll see the bonds from last year. So don't ask me a question about the bonds in this budget. These are already bonds that already passed and already, some of them already sold, a lot of them already sold. The bonds that we're going to conduct for this year will be in the FY16 budget that we'll be taking up over the next few weeks. So that's the difference in the amended and the regular budget as well. I would just say this, that I got to break out a list of the disagreements between the House and the Senate. They're really very minor. I think that we'll be able to get together with the House and resolve this budget, and there's some really good things I think that are happening in the state, and I don't really foresee a lot of difficulty in resolving these and moving on to the 2016 budget. Mr. President, that concludes the remarks, and try to make it as painless as possible, but I'll be happy to attempt to answer questions. The budget staff's here. If you got a question that's pretty technical, I'd invite you to go speak to them directly, but if it's something that you think that even I might could answer, I'll attempt to do that. So, Mr. President, I'll be glad to entertain questions.
You do have some questions. Chair recognizes Senator from 39th for a question.
With Senator Yield.
Yes, sir.
I am looking at the talking points that were distributed, and I'm looking under the Department of Community Health, where it says that we are agreeing with the House and Governor to add $42.7 million to the Indigent Care Trust Fund for all private deemed and non-deemed hospitals eligible for DISH, the DISH program. Right. And it goes on further to say that also agrees with the House and Governor to utilize prior year Indigent Care Trust Fund reserve funds for the state match for the DISH program again. My question, Mr. Chair, is why was that necessary? And could you expand on just why we're doing that? Why was it necessary?
Well, it's always a little complicated to discuss deemed and non-deemed hospitals, but I'll give you my best shot at it. We've done this every year, and this is based on their lower participation in the trust fund for disproportionate share. It basically has to do with hospitals that have a smaller service for indigents, but yet do provide that service, and they're eligible, but the state has to match those funds as well. They don't qualify for the total federal funds that the hospitals that do a high percentage like Grady would do. Those funds flow directly and come from the federal government, but the state has to provide a portion in order to draw down the federal funds for these hospitals. But they're generally private hospitals who do some indigent care, but they don't qualify for the direct payment from the feds.
For the yield.
Sure.
Isn't it true that those Indigent Care Trust Fund dollars are becoming even more and more precious to making sure that the people who they're designed to help actually get help?
Yeah. Well, we're maximizing the amount that we can draw down for the other hospitals.
Sure.
So yes, they are precious, and I'm glad to see that Congress has continued those payments. There's some schedule that might phase them out, but so far they haven't done that.
And that's what I want to ask you about, if the Senator further yields.
Sure. Okay.
Isn't it true that the federal government is probably going to phase those out at some point in the near future, that indeed they were scheduled to expire by now, but they've continued? Isn't that true?
Well, that's true that Congress has chosen to extend those payments. I think as long as, the last thing I would tell you is I'm not an expert on all this funding, but just from the casual observation, I would tell you that as long as there seems to be a really strong need for it in the country, and as long as there are needy folks out here and the hospitals are struggling in some cases, there'll be a strong inclination to continue those funds for a while till the whole issue to court cases and these other things time passes and things happen and we settle on what is the future going to look like in health care, I'm hopeful they'll continue those payments.
Well, Senator, for the yield.
Yes, sir.
And that's what now we're getting down to the lick log,
Go ahead,
so
I'm
to
gonna
speak. Because isn't it true that those indigent care trust fund dollars scheduled to phase out at some point in time in the future, most likely sooner than later, that they were designed to phase out so that Medicaid expansion money could replace those funds? Wouldn't it be a smarter thing to do is to accept Medicaid expansion, do Medicaid expansion, insure 650,000 Georgians, save 3,000 lives a year, and so the decline and the decrease and most likely cessation of those indigent care trust fund dollars would not devastate our budget?
Well, I would say this. I know that the senator is passionate about that issue, but I would say that it hasn't happened yet, and until it does, then we'll continue to accept those funds and send them where they need to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator, 41st, you wish to ask a question, speak. 39th wishes to speak. There are no further questions, Senator.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your attention this morning, and I urge your adoption of the Senate substitute to House Bill 75.
Senator, there's a late arriving question. Senator from the 42nd has a question, if you'd be willing to yield.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. Is it true that the House removed the governor's recommendation to add some additional funds to the judicial administrative districts?
Can you point to a specific item?
I certainly can't. That's why I'm asking. I've heard that, and
let me
would
just
like to
take
know if that's the case.
I don't think the governor has removed anything in the judiciary budget.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. My understanding was that the House removed a recommendation and an increase from the governor.
You're new, so let me explain to you the way the budget process works as it pertains to the other two branches of government. The governor and the OPB reviews all executive branch budget submissions and decides which portion of them to recommend. They do not pass at all on the judicial request nor the legislative request. So when the first review that the judicial portion of the state budget gets is when the House and Senate review those. So you will normally see them request a number of things, the House and Senate. That's the first, that passes right through the governor's budget, and then the House and Senate review those, and those subcommittees make recommendations, and we fund some and we don't fund others. But it's not, it's just that's the review process. They haven't been reviewed up to that point. So it's not quite the same thing as an executive branch agency which has had their budget already reviewed. And I think that if you talk to the people in the judiciary branch, they'll tell you they don't expect to get everything they ask for, but they submit the things that they say they need, and we look at it and try to justify it. But frankly, we don't usually do a lot of additions in the amended budget. As I mentioned earlier, I don't know whether you were in your seat, but as I mentioned earlier, it has to be a pretty unusual thing to fund new initiatives in the amended budget.
Understand.
I'd be happy to look at that particular item with you and explain, but some of the House recommendations we took, we funded a couple of items. I don't remember what they were, recommended by the subcommittee that they did not fund, but we look at each one individually and try to make the best decision we can.
Will the senator further yield?
Sir.
One other area that I have a question about.
Okay.
I've heard, isn't it true that there's some talk either in the amended budget or in the 2016 budget about consolidating the Soil and Water Conservation Commission under a different agency?
There is a proposal in the 16 budget to not consolidate, but to transfer elements of soil and water to two different agencies. One is EPD and one is the Agriculture Department. In this budget, though, there's a deletion of a couple of positions that I think that we probably restored some of that. But this budget does not address the transfer of that agency into these other two departments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions, Senator.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the senator from 39th. 39th. Recognized to speak to the SB 75, the supplemental budget.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I'm going to spend a little bit of time this morning talking about this budget and specifically Medicaid expansion. We will have another opportunity in the next budget bill that comes to the floor to have more expanded conversation, and I will take advantage of that opportunity when it comes. But for right now, I do want to say, explain something to folk. When the Affordable Care Act was passed, the idea was to allow states to expand, require states to expand Medicaid. And with that expansion of Medicaid, the amount of indigent care trust fund money would be decreased and phased out over time in the short term. No one anticipated the Supreme Court saying that states could opt out of Medicaid expansion. So in a state like Georgia, no Medicaid expansion, and at the same time, our indigent care trust fund dollars are at risk. It's what I'm calling the Medicaid expansion double whammy. Don't do Medicaid expansion and lose precious dollars that are targeted to take care of the folk in Georgia who can't afford health care and go to our emergency rooms for care. So it's the double whammy, and that's why the decision not to do Medicaid expansion is so egregious. It can be done, and it can be done in a way, in creative ways. That's why I'm glad that Arizona, a Republican-led state, with a very conservative governor, did what? Medicaid expansion. Arkansas said, please give us a waiver, federal government. The federal government, the Obama administration, gave that waiver. And what did they do? They said, okay, we don't want to do conventional Medicaid expansion. What we'll do is we'll use that money to allow people to purchase insurance off the exchanges, off the exchange. And even Tennessee has been able to do Medicaid expansion. I would have preferred that they do it another way, but they did it. They did it in a creative way, added personal responsibility targets in doing Medicaid expansion. Got to go to your doctor's appointments, got to do a co-payment, have to do those personal responsibility things in order to get your health insurance. You've heard it before, but it bears repeating. 650,000 Georgians would be covered if for Medicaid expansion. 650,000 of our neighbors, they're not Democrats or Republicans, they're sick folk who need health care. 650,000 Georgians would get health insurance. 650,000 out of the 2 million people in Georgia that don't have health care. But beyond that, beyond the fact that 3,000 people are dead who would have been alive last year if we did Medicaid expansion, set aside the fact that another 3,000 will die this year if not for Medicaid expansion. Beyond that, it's economic development, bringing $35 million a year to the Georgia economy over 10 years. The numbers are there for everybody's reflection. If you want to see those numbers, I can get you a link, and the numbers are all laid out. And then finally, I'm a little bit concerned that we are using ICTF money to send money to hospitals that do not treat the large number of poor people, the non-deemed hospitals. I have a concern about that, but that is just one part of a large concern that I have, that Medicaid expansion is the right thing to do. It's not the right thing to do just because it would lead to economic development, but it would save lives. It would save the lives of your neighbors, your friends, your constituents, and mine as well. I yield the well unless there are any questions, Mr. President.
No questions, Senator.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Senator from the 41st, the distinguished minority leader. Speak on the supplemental budget. In favor of it, I'm sure.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, first of all, I'd like to make a comment referring to the senator from the 4th. For the last 25 years, when I leave this Capitol, I look to his office and his light's always on. He's one of the late night, hardest working members we have, and we appreciate that effort in the Senate budget. One thing that we need to do each time we look at the budget is reflect at where we are in a general sense. This is the amended budget. It's not the big budget. We'll have a lot more to talk about then. But we need to reflect where we are. And remember, as we look at big issues like transportation and its funding, that we've got to remember education and its funding. We've got to look at how they interact amongst each other. The House right now has a transportation bill that takes 1 cent of taxes that is going to the general fund and could be arguably said spent in the education area and puts that back into transportation. When we look at this budget, we need to reflect on where we are. We have cut over the years billions of dollars. I'm so glad the economy is going along now, because when constituents used to come to me and say, we're underfunding education, and they'd say it's all about the economy being slow in the recession, I would tell them, yes, that is part of it. But it's also the policies we've made and the decisions we've made up here to cut billions of dollars of taxes. Some of them, like the title tag tax or one ad valorem tax on your car, affected a lot of people. Some of them affected very small companies. Just one sporting goods company's got a tax break in here at one time. And some of those, like some of the movie industry tax cuts, maybe did generate jobs and revenue. Some did not. We didn't evaluate them in maybe as good a sense as we should. It gives us time as this budget comes through to reflect on where we are. We talk about $1 billion, $1.5 billion needed for transportation, and we talk this session about education, that we will have a commission to look at the funding in the future. The fact is that we are over $747 million short of where we need to be. The governor talked in his State of State a year ago, I believe, about 9,000 fewer teachers. We know that it would cost $450 million to get those people back in the system and close our teacher student ratio to where it was previously supposed to be. We have to be addressing those issues, and we have to reflect on those issues as we move forward with each budget. We have to know that when we talk about having to cut in the big budget or other places bus drivers from health insurance, that has a trickle-down effect on the people that we are here to represent, on the quality of people driving our kids around. We have to reflect that when we cut the health insurance of teachers and their pay, that it does affect the quality of education and the service to our children. And in today's discussion will be an education bill to take over failing schools. And I put to you that maybe they should change not a principle, but the Georgia legislature or members thereof, and elect people who will fund education with classroom sizes can help students, that will see that just changing a bureaucrat at the top of the school may not be the solution, but that we also should look at tutors in grades the early grades, 1 through 8 and others. We need to reflect on the budget as we go forward, not just today, but each day before we get to the big budget, and realize that even as we close some of the gaps in education funding, we're going to leave almost a $500 million, $470 million hole that will have to be filled in future years. But that not only that needs to be done, we need to do more. So I ask each of you, as you vote for this budget today, or if you found something you don't like, appreciate the hard work of our chairman who takes what he is given and does a good job, but that we need to do a better job in making sure our students across the state are given the quality education that will move them forward. And I think that we have a ways to go. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Thank you, Leader. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree in the report of committee which failed pass the bill. Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chair is none and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. And Secretary will unlock the machine. Those that would like to vote, it is open if you haven't. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 1, and this bill, MC Rex Constitution majority, is therefore adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from the 4th. I'm sorry.
I move the Senate immediately transmit House Bill 75 to the House.
So. We had a a malfunction on the voting machine. It's on the senator from the 36th. And if you would, just write a note and we'll put it in the journal of your, register your vote on the supplemental budget. I know she was trying to vote. The chair of the Appropriations Committee, the senator from the 4th, has moved for immediate transmittal. Is there objection? Without objection, we will immediately transmit over to the House for their speedy approval, I am confident. I am also want to take this opportunity to say to the Senate that we are very, very blessed not only to have a wonderful chair of the Appropriations Committee, but also a Senate Budget Office that works tirelessly with a great executive director, along with their staff that's present here on the side. Let's give them a round of applause for all the great work that they do. Melanie, thank you. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader, Senator from the 46th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Thursday, February 12th.
10 a.m. Thursday. Read the announcements.
The 12 p.m. Rules Committee meeting will be held upon adjournment in room 450 of the Capitol. The 1 p.m. Public Safety Committee meeting will be held in room 310 of CLOB. The 1 p.m. Insurance and Labor Committee meeting will be held in room 125 of the Capitol. The 1 p.m. Education and Youth Committee meeting will be held in room 307 of CLOB. The 2 p.m. Finance Committee meeting will be held in the Mezzanine Room 1 of the Capitol. The 3 p.m. State Institutions and Property Committee will be held in Room 123 of the Capitol. The 3 p.m. Judiciary Non-Civil Committee meeting will be held in Room 307 of CLOB. The 3 p.m. Transportation Committee meeting will be held in Room 450 of the Capitol. The 4 p.m. Regulated Industries and Utilities Committee will be held in Room 310 of CLOB. The 4 p.m. State and Local Governmental Operations Committee meeting will be held in the Mezzanine Room 1 of the State Capitol. Mr. President, this completes the order.
Any other announcements? The majority leader has moved. We stand adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. All of those in favor will say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. We stand adjourned.